In the quiet village of Ndele, where the rooster's crow marked the start of each day and children played barefoot in the dusty red streets, lived a boy named Tembu. He was 16, tall and thin, with eyes too deep for someone his age. While the other boys chased goats and played drums at sunset, Tembu sat alone under the old baobab tree behind the village cemetery. Tembu was not like the others. He didn't laugh loudly or join the village dances. He spoke only when spoken to and often wandered into the graveyard with a small notebook and a charcoal pencil, scribbling words no one ever read. The villagers called him the Quiet One and whispered that he had death in his eyes. But Tembu didn't mind. In truth, he felt more peace among the dead than the living. When he was 10, his mother died giving birth to a baby girl who never made it. His father, overwhelmed with grief, left the village and never returned. Since then, Tembu was raised by his old grandmother, who often stared blankly at the wall and spoke to spirits. Death had visited his home and never truly left. One day, the village mortuary posted a notice. "Cleaner needed. Apply in person." It wasn't a job anyone wanted, not even the strongest men in the village. But Tembu's heart raced when he saw the sign. It felt like fate. That same afternoon, he walked barefoot to the mortuary, with his head bowed and asked for the job. The old mortician, Mr. Jaji, was surprised. "You're too young," he said. But when he looked into Tembu's eyes and saw the calm darkness, there he changed his mind. "Fine, come tomorrow, but don't be late." So, the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Tembu reported for duty. The mortuary was a cold, quiet place. Long white halls, steel tables, the scent of chemicals, and silence. It was nothing like the noise of the village, and that's why Tembu loved it. He cleaned the floors, changed the sheets, and wiped the tables. He never complained, never asked questions. Mr. Jaji watched him for weeks and nodded in approval. "Strange boy," he'd mutter, "but good worker." Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. Tembu was finishing his shift when a white van pulled into the yard. 2 men jumped out and opened the back door. Inside was a young girl's body, no older than Tembu. Her skin was still fresh, her braids neatly tied with blue ribbons. She had died just hours ago in a tragic accident on the main road. A motorbike crash, they said. Her name was Liana. Tembu stood frozen as the stretcher rolled past him. His eyes locked onto her face. Even in death, she looked like she was only sleeping. Peaceful. Beautiful. That night, he could not sleep. He lay on his thin mat, eyes wide open, thinking of her. Something about her wouldn't let go. The next day, he worked quickly, cleaning, wiping, organizing, waiting for night to fall. When Mr. Jaji finally left, locking the main office behind him, Tembu stayed behind. He knew every corner of the building, every creak of the floor. He tiptoed into the cold room where the bodies rested. There she was, Liana, covered with a white sheet. Alone. Still. His heart pounded. Hands trembling, he reached for the sheet and gently pulled it back. Her face lay before him, serene and untouched. Tembu sat beside her and whispered, "You don't have to be alone. I'll stay with you." He reached for her cold hand, and for the first time in his life, he smiled. Tembu didn't know how long he sat there holding Liana's cold hand. Time didn't seem to move in the cold room. The only sound was the hum of the freezer units and the soft beating of his own heart. Her skin was pale, smooth, and cold like river stones in early morning. But to Tembu, she was perfect, peaceful, silent. She didn't look at him with judgment or whisper behind his back like the villagers did. In that moment, he felt something strange. Something that felt like peace. For the first time since his mother died, Tembu wasn't lonely. He felt connected to someone, even if that someone wasn't alive. He stood slowly, walked to the supply cabinet, and took out a folded blanket. He laid it on the floor beside the table. Then he climbed up and gently rested his head beside hers. He closed his eyes, the scent of disinfectant in the air, and whispered, "You're the only one who listens." And then he slept. That night, the wind howled through the trees, outside. A storm rolled over the village, but inside the mortuary, Tembu slept soundly beside Liana's still form. In his dream, they were walking through a field of white lilies. She laughed, and he laughed too. He felt warm for the first time in years. When he woke up, it was still dark. The sheet still covered most of her body, and her eyes remained closed. For a moment, he stared at her in silence. Then, carefully, he pulled the sheet back over her and whispered, "I'll come again." The next morning, he returned to his duties like nothing happened. Mr. Jaji didn't suspect a thing. Tembu worked quietly, quickly, always with one ear, listening for when the mortician would leave. Each day, he waited for the chance to be alone with her again. By the third night, it had become a ritual. He'd lie beside her and talk softly. He told her about his mother, his empty home, how the kids in school laughed at him for being weird. He told her about the books he read, about the stars, about how he never felt like he belonged anywhere, except with her. Sometimes he imagined she blinked. Other times, he thought he saw her lips twitch. But he told himself it was just his mind playing tricks. Still, it didn't matter. He liked imagining she heard him, that she was choosing to stay quiet, just to listen. But something began to shift. On night. The fifth night, as he lay beside her, her fingers brushed against his. It was so slight, so gentle, that he sat up immediately. He stared at her hand, heart pounding. Did you just move?" He whispered, but she remained still. He rubbed his eyes and laughed nervously. I must be losing my mind. But he wasn't. The next day, as he wiped the glass cabinets and mopped the floor, his thoughts raced. What if she wasn't really dead? Could she be in some kind of deep sleep? What if his presence was waking her? That night, he returned again. He brought flowers this time, fresh marigolds from the graveyard garden, and placed them near her head. "I brought these for you," he said shyly. As he sat beside her and held her hand, a tear rolled down his cheek. "You're all I have now." Then he thought he heard something, a sound, a faint sigh. His eyes widened. He leaned close. "Liana?" He whispered. She didn't answer, but her chest, it rose, ever so slightly. Tembu stumbled back, dropping her hand. She wasn't breathing. But she had moved, or had she? He stared at her in horror and wonder. Something was not right. And yet, he couldn't stay away. The next day, Tembu barely spoke a word at work. His mind was spinning with questions. He had seen her chest rise. He was sure of it. Not once, but twice. And when he touched her hand, hadn't she moved, even just a little? He wanted to ask Mr. Jaji. But how could he explain it without sounding insane? "Excuse me, sir, but I think one of the corpses is alive." No, they would think he was mad. Maybe he was. But something deep in his soul told him it wasn't. His imagination. That evening, Tembu returned to the mortuary alone. The sun had barely set, but he couldn't wait. His legs carried him faster than ever, heart pounding with every step. He unlocked the back door and tiptoed through the hallway until he reached the cold room. There she was. Liana. Still. Silent. Beautiful. He stood frozen in the doorway. 100 thoughts rushed through his mind. What if she really was alive? What if she needed help? But what if she wasn't? What if he was going crazy? He walked closer, slowly, carefully, and reached out to touch her hand again. It was still cold, but not as cold as the night before. "Liana," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "If you can hear me, please move again." No answer. No twitch. No sigh. Tembu sat down and rested his back against the cold wall. "Maybe it was nothing," he mumbled. "Maybe I'm just tired." Then something happened. A soft sound. A breath? A rustle? Tembu jumped to his feet. His eyes darted toward her body. This time it wasn't her hand or chest. It was her lips. They were slightly open. His heart leaped into his throat. He stepped forward and leaned over her. Her eyelashes fluttered. "No," he whispered. "No way." Then, her fingers moved, clear as day. "Liana?" He gasped. Her eyes opened. For a moment, she stared straight into his. Tembu stumbled backward, crashing into the steel cabinet behind him. The sound echoed loudly, but he didn't care. His entire body trembled. She was alive. Alive. She blinked slowly, her lips dry and cracked. She opened her mouth, but only a faint sound came out. Tembu rushed forward, grabbing a bottle of water and lifting her head gently. "Drink," he said softly. She took a few small sips, then winced. Her voice cracked as she asked, Where am I?" Tembu felt like crying. "You're in the mortuary. You were brought here after the accident. They thought you were dead." She blinked again. "I was dead?" "No," he said, quickly. "You weren't. You couldn't have been." Her body trembled. She tried to sit up but fell back weakly. Tembu caught her and helped her rest against the table. "You need to stay still. You've been like this for days." She looked around, the room confused. "Why am I here alone?" Tembu didn't answer. How could he tell her he'd been lying beside her every night? I was waiting for someone to come for me," she whispered. "I came," he said quietly. "I never left." Liana looked at him closely for the first time. "Who are you?" Tembu hesitated. "My name is Tembu. I work here. I've been watching over you." Her lips moved slowly into a faint smile. "Then thank you, Tembu. You saved me." Tembu felt his chest tighten. He didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear. Liana was no longer just a body on a table. She was alive, and he was the only one who knew. For the first time in days, the cold room of the mortuary felt warm. Liana, who had once been still and lifeless, was breathing, whispering, and moving. But her body was weak, and her memories were blurry, like a fog she couldn't walk through. Tembu stayed by her side, wiping her forehead and feeding her small sips of water. Every time she opened her eyes and looked at him, he felt something strange. Not fear, not guilt, something deeper. As if this was how it was meant to be. As if the universe had placed her in his care for a reason, but Tembu didn't tell anyone. He couldn't. He knew if he told Mr. Jaji or the police, they would take her away. She would leave the mortuary, and with her, his only sense of connection, of purpose. No. She had to stay. He would protect her, even if she didn't understand it yet. "You need to rest," he said gently, adjusting the blanket he had laid over her. "I need to see my parents," Liana whispered, her voice still, raw. "They must be worried." Tembu's heart tightened. He looked away. "You can't. Not yet." "Why not?" "It's not safe," he lied. "You're still too weak. They'll think something's wrong with you. They might take you away and put you in a place where they keep sick people." Liana frowned. Her head hurt, and her thoughts were slow. But something didn't feel right. That night, Tembu locked the back door of the mortuary and kept the key hidden. He turned off the lights and sat beside Liana in the dark. She had fallen asleep again, her breath light and shallow. But her face, even in sleep, was filled with worry. In the village, news was spreading. Liana's family was preparing for her funeral. Her father, a farmer named Bako, had chosen a white coffin and a yellow dress for her final rest. Her mother wept every night, holding the photo of her only daughter, kissing it before sleep. Friends visited the family daily, bringing food and candles, sharing memories of Liana's laughter, her joy, her dreams. No one suspected that just a mile away, Liana was alive. One evening, Liana awoke to find herself alone. The door to the cold room was closed but not locked. She sat up slowly, her legs weak, her body aching. She slid off the table and tried to stand. Her knees shook, but she managed. She walked to the cabinet and pulled it open. Inside were medical gloves, wipes, and a flashlight. At the bottom, she found an old cell phone. Dusty, cracked, but still charged. With trembling hands, she turned it on. The screen lit up. She pressed the first number in the contact list and brought it to her ear. Ring, 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 then, click. Hello? Came a man's voice. Tears filled her eyes. Help me, she whispered. My name is Liana. I'm alive. I'm at the mortuary. Before she could say more, the phone was snatched from her hand. Tembu stood over her, eyes wide with shock and fear. What are you doing? He demanded. Liana stepped back, her body shaking. I called someone. They'll come. They'll find me. No, Tembu whispered, panic rising in his voice. You don't understand. They'll ruin everything. You're not ready. I want to go home. Tembu's expression darkened. He stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. You can't, he said softly. You belong here. With me. Liana pushed him away, eyes full of fear. But before she could run, Tembu locked the door behind him. Outside, the wind howled again through the village. And in the cold room, Liana realized something terrible. She wasn't being cared for. She was being kept. While Liana lay trapped in the cold room, the village of Ndele prepared for her burial. The funeral was to take place in 3 days, and her coffin now sat in the family's living room, surrounded by candles and quiet mourners. No one could understand how such a bright, kind girl had died so young. They whispered stories of curses, bad luck, and unfinished dreams. But not everyone believed she was truly gone. Liana's older brother, Kimo, a 22-year-old apprentice carpenter, had a strange feeling in his chest. He couldn't sleep at night, couldn't eat. His sister's death had come so suddenly, and something didn't sit right. She wasn't sick, he kept telling himself. She was strong. She was full of life. What if they were wrong? One morning, he went to the village health center and asked to speak with Amma, the nurse who had helped transport Liana's body. Amma remembered the day clearly. She collapsed at home, she explained. We did everything we could, but when she arrived at the hospital, they said it was too late. Kimo leaned forward. Did you see her? Did you touch her? Was she cold? Amma paused. Honestly? I didn't check myself. The doctor declared her gone. I only helped with the paperwork. Kimo's eyes narrowed. And where is she now? Still. At the mortuary, Amma said. Mr. Jaji is waiting for the family to give the final burial date. Kimo left that conversation with a heavy heart, but also with a spark of hope. What if she wasn't dead? What if something was wrong? Meanwhile, inside the mortuary, Liana grew weaker. Tembu brought her food, bread, water, fruit, but always with soft, quiet words. They'll come for you one day, he said. But not yet. You need me. Liana no longer responded. She stared at the walls, at the flickering light bulb overhead. Her spirit dimmed, not just from hunger or fear, but from confusion. Why had this boy taken her in? Why wouldn't he let her go? Tembu still believed he was doing something good. Every time he sat beside her, he told her about his mother, about the day she died in his arms. He talked about the village children who mocked him, the teachers who called him slow. "No one ever saw me," he said one night, "until you opened your eyes." But he couldn't see what she saw. His kindness had become a prison. One night, just before he locked up, he heard something outside. A shuffle. A voice. "Chemo?" Amma whispered as they crouched in the bushes behind the mortuary. "Yes," he answered. "I saw lights inside. He's still here." They had come to investigate with nothing more than a flashlight and guts. Chemo had convinced Amma that something was off, and she agreed. They crept along the back wall, toward a small dusty window. Inside, they saw Tembu, sitting beside someone on a table. Amma squinted. That looks like it's her," Chemo gasped, breath catching in his throat. "That's Liana." Liana turned slightly and looked toward the window, her eyes dull but alive. Chemo stood up too fast, knocking over a metal bucket near the door. Clang. Inside, Tembu jumped to his feet, startled. He rushed to the window, but the figures had already vanished into the night. Back in the village, Chemo ran to his parents' home, screaming, "She's alive! Liana is alive!" His father dropped his walking stick. His mother collapsed in shock, and for the first time since her death, hope came rushing through the village like morning light breaking through a storm. By the time the sun rose over Ndele, the village was buzzing like a shaken beehive. "She's alive? That can't be true. I saw them build her coffin with my own eyes." But the truth was no longer just a whisper. Chemo stood in the village square, shouting, trembling with emotion. Beside him, Nurse Amma nodded with urgency. "I saw her too," she said. "She's weak, but she's breathing. The boy's keeping her in the mortuary. We must act now." Liana's father, Bako, didn't wait. With trembling hands, he gathered a few strong men from the village. "We go now," he said. "We bring her home." The small group rushed toward the mortuary, carrying nothing but courage and the weight of disbelief. Word spread quickly, and soon a crowd trailed behind them, mothers clutching babies, elders walking with staffs, curious children tagging along barefoot. It felt like a funeral had turned into a rescue mission. Inside the mortuary, Tembu was sitting beside Liana again, brushing her hair with a soft cloth. Her eyes stayed on the ceiling, blank and still, but her fingers were moving now, faint, fluttering signs of life. "You don't need them," Tembu whispered. "They left you. Behind. I found you. I brought you back. That must mean something." Suddenly a loud bang shattered the silence. "Bang! Bang! Tembu!" a voice roared. "Open this door!" He froze. "Bang!" Another blow, stronger this time. "No, no, no," he muttered, stumbling to the door. He pressed his back against it as if that would hold them off. "They'll take you from me." Outside, Chemo's voice shouted again. "Liana! If you're in there, we're here. We're taking you home." Liana stirred at the sound of her brother's voice. Her lips parted, and a small sound came out, barely more than a whisper. "Chemo." She tried to sit up, but her body was still too weak. Inside, Tembu's world cracked. Everything he'd tried to protect was slipping away. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he looked at her. "You don't understand. I was alone. I needed you." The door burst open. Bako, Chemo, and two other men rushed in. Their eyes landed on Liana, thin and pale, but alive. The men gasped. One crossed himself. Another dropped to his knees and cried out, "It's a miracle!" Chemo rushed to her side. Liana, it's me. I'm here." Her lips trembled. "You came." Tembu stood back, his arms falling to his sides. He didn't resist when the men pushed past him. He didn't fight when Bako raised a hand in fury, but then stopped himself, too overwhelmed to strike. "She needs help," Amma said, stepping forward. "She needs to go to the clinic now." Within minutes, they carried her out on a stretcher. The villagers made way in silence. Some cried. Others gasped in disbelief. Liana's mother collapsed to her knees when she saw her daughter's face. Tembu stood alone at the mortuary doorway, watching her disappear into the distance. No one arrested him. Not yet. No one asked questions. Not yet. They were too focused on Liana, on the miracle girl who had come back from the dead. But as the crowd moved farther away and the dust settled in the yard, Tembu fell to his knees. The girl he loved was gone, and he knew everything was about to change. Liana's return was nothing short of a miracle. As she lay recovering in the village clinic, elders came from distant towns just to witness her survival. "She rose from death," they whispered. "Surely the gods were not done with her yet." The nurse, Amma, watched over her closely. She regained strength little by little. The color returned to her cheeks. Her fingers no longer trembled when she reached for water. But in her eyes, behind the healing, there was still a deep sadness, a shadow that didn't fade as quickly as her weakness. One evening, Liana asked to speak with the chief. Word was sent, and Chief Muta himself arrived, followed by a few elders and even her father, Bako. They gathered in the clinic room as Liana sat up, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "I need to speak the truth," she said quietly, but firmly. They listened. She told them everything, about waking in the mortuary, about Tembu, the boy who had stayed by her side, about how he fed her, watched over her, and locked her in when she asked to go home. Gasps filled the room. Her father clenched his fists. "He imprisoned you." Shiti shook her head gently. "Yes, but it was more than that. He was broken inside. He was not evil, just lost. I believe he didn't know how else to feel close to someone." Chief Muta stroked his beard. "This is serious, Liana. What you experienced was wrong. There must be justice." "I understand," she said, her voice calm. "But I ask that the village not punish him with hate. He needs help, not fire." The next day, the chief called a village meeting under the great baobab tree. The entire community gathered. The sun was bright, but the air was thick with tension. Tembu stood in the center of the circle, alone, his eyes to the ground. Liana arrived with Amma, walking slowly but strong. She faced the villagers. "This boy," she began, "did something no one should ever do. He kept me hidden. He took away my choice. And yet, he saved me too. I was buried in silence. He brought me water. He fed me when I could not move. He spoke to me when I was too weak to speak." The crowd was silent. "I do not ask you to forget," she continued, "but I ask you to forgive. Let him receive healing. Let him learn what love is, not from the dead, but from the living." The chief nodded and spoke. "Tembu will not be cast out. He will be sent to the hill monastery to live among the peacekeepers. He will work, learn, and be watched. In time, we will see what becomes of him." The villagers murmured in agreement. Justice was being served, not with cruelty, but with wisdom. As Tembu was led away, he looked at Liana one last time. Their eyes met, not with hatred, but with something softer, understanding, maybe even forgiveness. Months passed. Liana healed fully and began helping Amma at the clinic. She became a light in the village, a reminder that life could return, even after death. Tembu worked in the hills with the peacekeepers. He learned to farm, to read, to speak his pain with truth. He sent a letter to Liana one day. It was simple, just 6 words. Thank you for seeing me alive." And though she never wrote back, she smiled when she read it. In the end, the village didn't just remember the boy who slept beside the dead. They remembered the girl who chose to forgive and taught them all what it truly meant to live.